kid in the 80s.
Welcome back, allies, for another segment that we have. It's kind of an in the news segment. Larry, Jim, Larry, Bart, Cheeky Baby, bouncing Hogan off the thing, cornucopia. It's Thanksgiving time now again. And
it is.
Also means that we have an announcement because the Toy Hall of Fame has announced 3 new entrants into their cavalcade of amazing toys.
And I haven't heard any of this, so I'm very excited to I'm going into this blind completely.
Which makes it wonderful for me. The first toy that we want to introduce is something that I'm not familiar with, but my little sisters are, and that's the American Girl dolls.
Oh, yeah, I know what those are. Yeah, I'm familiar with those.
Yeah, different girls from different parts of society, kind of like an equality type of deal for girls and women to, just have something fun to play with.
I think certainly to draw it into the 80s, certainly an evolution of the whole Cabbage Patch idea.
Oh, absolutely.
I would think, all of them are different and, that sort of thing or whatever. So it's an interesting choice. I'm not hating on that. I know that was a pretty big toy line for girls. I don't know much about it. Sorry. But
well, we don't expect you to know too much about it. In fact, us not knowing much about it gives us something to research, and we can look into it further.
This is true. This is absolutely true.
That's one of the reasons why we like looking into things like this. It gives us an idea, a global perspective, if you will.
Yeah.
And speaking of global perspective and global domination, the second one was the board game Risk.
Oh my goodness, what a great game.
Think of the hours that you spent playing Risk as a kid.
Yes, Risk, man, that was one of my favorites as a kid. I loved Risk. That was a really, really, really good game.
It's still one of my favorites. I mean, Asia, seven guys for every go, but you couldn't hold on to Asia because and everybody and their mother came up with the strategy of sitting there in the Australia territory and build up and build up and build up
in order to make and
to make that push. I, on the other hand, decided on Africa and building up Africa because of the strings to South America, to Europe, into Asia, and I was able to you'd build the border with 20,000 guys.
Yeah, boy, it's a complicated game, and yet somehow, even as kids, it was great at expanding the mind and allowing you to really develop skills in terms of creative thinking and coming up with solutions, and really a great game.
I will go out on a line and say that it's probably one of the first role-playing games that anybody put their hands on, because you'd have different colors. You'd have the red army, I'd have the blue army, somebody else would have the green army, somebody would have the yellow army, and then you got to choose what the army did.
I definitely think it probably was, and I think along that lines, I would say that the hors d'oeuvre, if you will, to get you to that game was probably playing Battleship.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, again, there was sort of an element of you're placing the ships, and there's an interactive where I could see you making the jump. If you liked that game, making the jump to Risk was probably not that far a leap, really.
Well, I'm also seeing that the people who liked Risk also made the jump to the tabletop game Axis and Allies.
I played that too. I remember that game. Yeah.
I can also see the same people who liked Risk probably liked playing Stratego.
Oh, I forgot about Stratego.
And the Stratego reference and your Battleship reference, those two would definitely rub really well together.
Yeah, there were a lot of really good war games now that I'm thinking about it.
And then
in that time period.
And then as far as the role-playing game and the dice and how the dice incorporate, I'm very, very convinced that a lot of Risk players also probably play Dungeons & Dragons.
I did not. And that's one of those things, knowing everything that I am into, I probably should have been into it, and for whatever reason, I don't know that I was just never around the right group of people or whatever. For whatever reason, it's something I never got into.
You and I both sit there, because I've played Dungeons & Dragons a couple of times, or started to learn how to play Dungeons & Dragons just recently because of a project that I was doing involving post-traumatic stress disorder, something that we're going to discuss later on this week. So you hold on to that one. It's also one of the reasons why I really got into Legos. But if you do think about it, it might not be somebody coming up to you going, hey, let's play Dungeons & Dragons. More you were probably already doing something else that was Dungeons and Dragons-esque. I know I was, like theater, professional wrestling.
Yeah,
not really a game aspect, but more of a...
Well, again, that's the weird thing, because, I mean, my goodness, I was a theater kid very, very, very young.
Yeah, so was I.
So I'm just, and everyone around me played it.
Mm-hmm.
I
just never,
I don't know for whatever reason it didn't appeal to me, or I never got into it or anything like that. Of course, at that age, I was far more into like sci-fi and things like that. So the idea of that sort of medieval influence or whatever, dragons and stuff, that wasn't. I didn't really find all that interesting until into adulthood, when I started going to Renaissance fairs and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden I was interested. But
and I accept your reasoning, because as I was coming up as a kid, my shift went towards superheroes.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, Batman in particular. I don't know why. I mean, there was some sci-fi in there, but it was more superhero based. As
Oddly enough, though, nowadays there's a role-playing game for whatever.
Oh yeah,
for whatever you happen to be into. I mean, if you want to do swords and sorcery, you can do that. You want to do sci-fi, you can do that. You superheroes, whatever. There's an app for that.
There's an app for that. Vampire the Masquerade. You can do a horror franchise. You can face off against Cthulhu if you wanted to. There's a role-playing game for pretty much everybody.
Yeah. So is that all that's going in, or are there?
Nope, there's one more.
Oh, there's one more.
One more quintessential, probably the pillar that almost every child ever, from now until way back when, off into the future. I'm trying to tie a giant tail at the end of this, but there's one toy.
Okay.
It's not even considered a toy.
All right. Well, what is it?
Sand.
Now that's a very interesting.
They put sand in the
in
the Toy Hall of Fame, and I can understand why.
Well, there's any number of toys that I can think of that incorporate sand.
Well, there's a number of boxes that I can think of incorporating sand too. It's just now that I'm older, I wouldn't go anywhere near them.
Well, there's that. We all know what some of the kids were doing in the sand, but that's neither here nor there. But I remember. Do you remember Magic Sand?
Yes.
They came in little bottles that looked like little genie bottles and everything, and it was basically a hydrophobic sand.
Yep.
In other words, it repelled water, and you could use it to build things underwater, and then you scoop it out, and it was still dry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was from Whammo, if I remember right, originally.
Whammo we got to do a piece on Whammo.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to.
We're working on a bunch of stuff over here.
As a matter of fact, I have a few bottles of the Magic Sand. I'll have to get them out, and we'll explore them someday. But yeah, I remember Magic Sand. But Whammo also did a thing with sand where it was like it was a disc, and there were two layers of sand, one white and one blue, and they were separated by a thin piece of plastic in between. So as you twisted it, the sand would move around in there, and you would create all these different designs or whatever. I remember.
But think of all the toys that were played with in sand. G.I. Joe,
Transformers, Star Wars,
Tonka trucks,
absolutely.
This, that, and the other thing. Sand is
Fisher Price.
You
can just keep going and going and going. There were so many. Really, sand. The more I'm thinking about this, as weird as it was when it came out of your mouth, it makes a lot of sense.
And that's kind of how I felt when I was looking at and doing research for this. Is looking at that sand showing up as one of the finalists is like sand, and then when you think about it, and like a 3-year-old played in sand.
Well, and it's not only the fact that the sand itself, but think about all the toys that are created with the idea that sand is going to be incorporated, the pails and the shovels and the molds to create sand castles.
Yeah, going to the beach.
All those beach toys that come out that are made with the express purpose of being used with sand. I mean, you need the sand in order for the toy to do any damn thing.
And even at this age, I still play in sand.
I do too, actually.
When you go to the beach, you have to.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
You build the big thing, and you watch the waves come in and tear the thing down, and then you're like, there it is. There's that thing. It fell down.
There was nothing like trying to sculpt that humongous thing in the sand.
Oh, absolutely.
I think we were all kids somewhere, sometime, whether it was at a beach or at a playground or something where everyone would get together and decide we're going to do this in the sand this day and create this humongous thing or whatever. And it was a lot of fun. I remember taking Star Wars figures and digging a big hole in the sand and creating the thing, the
Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, and the characters would go into the pit and everything else. And yeah, I remember that being a big one to do in the sand for sure.
I remember taking toy soldiers, green soldiers, and storming the beaches. Mm-hmm. Because sand offered a lot of possibilities that you didn't realize. And then you'd lose your toy in the sand, you get upset and go home without it. And some kid would find it and put it in his pocket.
That rotten SMA. So that's a really good list of finalists. I'm digging it.
Very interesting list. The American Doll, very interactive. Very happy for those who want to play with American Dolls because I don't care if you're a man or woman. If that's your deal, go for it. Risk, a very interactive game again for everybody who wants to play it. And then Sand, which is as neutral as you can get. I mean, it really is. Anybody played with Sand.
And still does.
And
on that note, folks, I think we've reached the end of this. So, Larry, this is Jim. We will see you very, very soon on our next big show.
Yes. Or maybe even sooner.